Hello, darling. This is River Roaring, celebrating the luminous life force in us all. Hello, darling. This is River Roaring, and I'm here today to talk about family court, family law and family court, meaning divorce, child custody, child support, domestic violence, and juvenile court is considered family law. Those are the main areas, and some side issues like prenups and things like this. So family court, there's a better way and what to do if you find yourself trapped inside. That's what I want to talk about today. Oh, I've thought about sharing this information with the world so many times. I'm glad I have a chance here to let it out. Don't let yourself get swallowed by the family court system. I was a family law trial attorney with my own office for over 20 years, and I witnessed so much that I wish the public could know about, and here is where I'm sharing all of that, because I witnessed so much wasted time, wasted money, and wasted emotional effort and strife inside families, just because I feel like people didn't understand the big picture. So this is the big picture, and I'm also going to just share some very true realities of family court that most attorneys and judges and people inside the court system will never share with you. So let's talk about it. First of all, my experience and perspective with family law. I Again, had my own family law trial attorney office in Austin, Texas, Travis County, Texas, from 1995 to 2016. And that's when we closed the office. So the office I had was a couple different locations through that time, 2 or 3 locations throughout that time, always within 2 or 3 blocks from the main courthouse, family law courthouse. So my clients could park at my office, and we could walk over to our hearings and trials and to the courthouse and walk back to my comfortable office and get back on the couches and relax between things. And my office was also really close to the state capitol, walkable, couple blocks. So I am pretty familiar with family law in Travis County, Texas. Quick story. Early on in my career as a family law attorney, I learned that I only get to practice law in Travis County, Texas. I have a Texas law license that would allow me to practice law anywhere in Texas, in any court in Texas, state court or local. And at the same time, I am not, my skin color is not white, and I am not a male body. So early in my career, I went to a smaller area. Austin, Texas is inside Travis County, Texas. And family law is dictated by which county you're in Texas. So you have a court system in Travis County, Texas that serves the Austin area and all of Travis County. And then each county in Texas has its own family law court system and judges. So I went to a more rural area outside of Travis County early in my career to take a custody case as a lawyer. And I pretty much got laughed out of court. I got called Little Missy. I got what they call good old boyed. And basically, it's a long story, but my client and my case and I were pretty much tricked, and lots of illegal stuff happened in this small county outside of Austin, smaller area. And we were pretty much laughed out of court because I am not a white male. And that was very obvious. And again, this is a long story, but by the end of it, it was very clear that I am not white enough in my skin color, and I am not male enough to be able to practice anywhere in Texas. This is back in the 90s and early 2000s. I don't know if it's exactly the same right now, but we are in Texas, which is known for its long, very proud history of racism and sexism. So that's where I found myself. So unlike my colleagues in family law who could travel around our area and practice in different counties all around the area and make money, make their living by going into different courthouses around this part of Texas, I couldn't do that because of my skin color and gender. So I was always 100% Travis County family law attorney, and I got to know this county very, very, very well over more than 20 years. So I stayed in my lane, I stayed in my county to make my living for those reasons. Of course, I could, like, my skin was very tough, and I could take that kind of judgment, but the problem was my client lost the case for no reason other than who I was. Believe me, there's so many illegal things that happen. This is a long story, and I couldn't go out to other counties even if I could suffer the judgment of it, because my clients would always lose because of who I was. So one of the biggest secrets, but not the biggest secret, I want to share today, and I'll start with this secret. Family law and all other law is not about the law. It's about the people who are deciding what the law is that day. So when I went to law school, all, young and innocent and ready to hear how the world works really beautifully through these wise laws that we have created in the United States, and coming out into practicing in trial courts and in the state house as a lobbyist also, I came to know, these are school children type of people making our decisions. These are actually all the legal decisions in courthouses and also in legislatures are really, all the decisions are made at like this junior high gut emotional level by people. So that's one of the secrets, is that you might think you're walking into a building in the courthouse, you have a great case, you know your case is good and strong, you know you're telling the truth, the other side is lying, you know the law's on your side. That doesn't mean you're going to win your case. So first secret of the podcast isn't even the biggest secret, which is we are, in fact, a country of men, not of law. In fact, it does matter who's deciding and what their petty emotional problems are. And so that's how the law actually works. So you can imagine I got to know the judges here in Travis County as well as I possibly could, because it's their moods and attitudes that would decide the case. So that's secret number one. We are a society, no matter how hard we've tried to otherwise, we are a society of men, not of law. And so just to finish off on my experience and perspective, I've at least handled hundreds, if maybe not 1,000 or more cases in family law in Travis County, Texas. Most of what I'm going to say today about family law would apply to any family law court in the United States, because I'm going to talk about some general principles. At the same time, I will try to make a point clear when I only know about Travis County on this one. the context and philosophy of family court. So how did family court? Oh, I also want to say about my own experience that when I left family law, I was charging $250 an hour for my time, but that was pretty low for my experience level. So if I had stayed there longer than 20 plus years, very much longer at all, like if I was going to stay there in the next year or so, I would have become board certified and raise my rates by at least 100 just to keep up with the market that I was in. So a good family law attorney is going to be many hundreds of dollars per hour, just to put that in there. So now, how did family court even come about? What is family court? This is one of the things that really perturbs me about the whole system. We shouldn't have family court. Here's why. When courtrooms were first invented in the United States, they were just brought over from England. And so England had a court system. Of course, the whole court system is all derived from the King's Court. Back in days when societies were governed by kings in Europe, the king would have a court of people who they trusted the most, who would get together every day, and the King's Court would decide things. And so that's where the word court comes from. And then as society developed in the Western world in Europe, then this is where this all comes from, not other areas, but where Western and European culture evolved to is having courtrooms that were with judges and attorneys, and they were primarily for business disputes, mostly. So they would be like, oh, it's this business against that business, this business against that business. And frankly, in the very early days, divorce wasn't a thing. A woman could not get a divorce from a man in America. Do you know that? Can you believe that? But it's true, because in the beginning, women were chattel, more so, much more. We didn't have the vote, and we were property. And so in the beginning of the United States itself, there really was no divorce, and we didn't really need family court. We didn't have family court. So they set courts up for business, and then as society evolved and people had really serious disputes inside their families, and I'm telling you a very basic and oversimplified story, but in an oversimplified way, women got the right to divorce. And so when all of that evolved, they needed a place to put those so-called disputes, which I don't even like to think of a divorce as a dispute at all. That's where we went wrong, in my opinion. And they decided, well, this is a dispute, and so let's put it into where businesses do their disputes and we'll create a court system for these disputes. We'll just put them in the same place as all these businessmen with their disputes. But the problem with that whole idea, which we're currently living out in this backwards culture, is that families don't benefit from ripping each other to shreds emotionally in a courtroom. The business might benefit from that, possibly, because that's going to be a money calculation, and it might benefit the business. You might be the head of a business and be like, yes, we're going to rip this person who did us wrong to shreds in court, and I've done the financial analysis, and this will all work out for us really well, so let's do it. In a family setting, the most important thing has nothing to do with ripping each other to shreds in court and going against one another. Families are the highest benefit when we can collaborate and consciously transition when we need to make transitions and bring in as much love as possible to that transition. That families will, in this day and age, almost always go through transitions in our culture. And so we need to bring love and compassion and all of our open hearts to family transitions. But no, right up front in this world we live in the United States of America, they created a court system and treat families like businesses that want to rip each other's throats out. And so there's our first flaw, is how the whole thing was set up. The goddess Empress River would not create a family court system for families in her realm. She would create another system where families do not pay attorneys by the hour, and strangers don't make the decisions for your own children and your personal financial issues like that. So just to start off with, River does not even agree family courts are necessary or wise. I believe that was a flawed concept from the beginning, and now we are living that out. And so from this context where our culture set up families so that if you have a transition, you are shuffled into this system where someone will take most of your money while they encourage you to rip your loved ones to shreds. That's what we've created. A system where you walk in, your bank account gets raped, and you are encouraged to tear your loved one apart. That's the truth of what family court is today. And it's just the truth of it. So let me talk about that in a little more detail, because here is the biggest secret of all family law. And I did this over 20 years and watched so many hundreds of people were my own clients. I was in court all the time. I saw thousands and thousands of cases that weren't all my own clients, but I saw thousands of family law cases over the years. And the biggest secret of all is, if you can, it's there. Almost every family law case is psychological and emotional, not legal. This is the biggest secret of almost every family law case. The vast majority of family law cases, the secret is resolution depends upon psychology and emotions, not the law, and not the attorneys, and not the judges. So the biggest secret of all is, if you and your so-called opponent in family law court, which is probably your lover, in every divorce and custody case, the quote-unquote opponent is your lover. You know, sometimes I wouldn't say it often because it's so sensitive, but sometimes I would say to a client, as we plan to spend a very large chunk of your finances on the fight with your ex, I just want to remind you that you shared a bed with them. You chose to love them. You shared all of yourself with them. Is there any other way we can resolve this that doesn't involve all of the emotional turmoil that's about to come up? Because a big family law trial will do two things: rape your bank account, except for certain cases where you get a government attorney, which is really child support, really. That's it. So it will rape your bank account, and worse than that, you will be emotionally violated by one another, and you'll be encouraged to emotionally violate the other. And they are so emotionally draining because you are going against your lover as hard as you can, and everyone's got very high stakes because thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars are on the line. Even in a relatively so-called cheap case, thousands of dollars are on the line because these lawyer fees are so high. So the biggest secret of all is that if you can simply sit down with your ex and come to psychological and emotional peace enough to agree on what to do in your family and your new expanded family, you can avoid the entire court system, basically. You can keep your thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in your bank account and not pay the lawyers all that money. You can basically do-si-do right around all that expensive and costly emotional torture. So why would most family law attorneys not tell you this? Because they're making their living off your fights, basically. That's basically what's happening in family law. The lawyers are making their living off of your family ripping one another to shreds emotionally. So the biggest secret of all, I'm just going to say it one more time, is that you can avoid all of that expense and all of those emotional scars and traumas by finding some way. There are many, many ways to do it. Some way to open your heart to your ex and have your ex open their heart just enough, even if it is just self-interest. Like, hey, ex, I understand we can go into family law court next and fight. And there's another option. If you and I can literally come to an agreement about our own family matters between us, that's all we have to do. We have to find some way to do it. If we can come to an agreement between the two of us about what to do with our family issues, we can be so much richer financially and so much happier, and we will be living in a future that we created and we decided upon, not a stranger deciding upon our family's future. That's the biggest secret of all. If you know anybody who's either in a family court situation or looking at one, share this podcast with them. I would constantly let my clients know this, so they would come to talk to me about taking their case, and they would always, of course, want to know how much is this going to cost. And we would definitely estimate the cost of the cases up front after I sat with them for at least about an hour and heard what's going on. And what was I assessing in that assessment hour with my clients? What was I assessing to tell the client how expensive the case would be? Because you already know the answer to this. What was River, the family law attorney, listening for in that initial interview as I heard all about the case? What was I listening for so that I could then give them a price estimate on the case for their attorney's fees? As I take a sip of tea. Correct. I was listening for how emotionally abrasive and psychologically twisted are these two people who are arguing with one another. If I found, oh, this is very emotionally abrasive and psychologically twisted, your case attorney's fee estimate is huge. You know, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars. Like, there's your estimate for my fees for handling your case. And if someone came in and said, we really love one another, we still love one another, we just know that we're not made for one another to live together, we have children, we've already figured out what's best for the kids when it comes to custody, child support, We feel like we have a few things we haven't agreed on yet, but we know we can agree because we have so much goodwill here with each other, and we both care most about the children's welfare and that we preserve our finances for the strength of this future expanded family. Then I'd be like, oh, your attorney's fees estimate is very low, which is, in a divorce case, depends also on some things like how many assets and documents need to be drafted for the split. But basically, like, oh, I can tailor your family law attorneys to very minimal, because I will just be possibly assisting in tiny bit of decision making, and then I'll just be drafting up all these documents for you and walking you through the court system like a cakewalk. Because when people agree in family law, with almost no exceptions, the court will say, oh, that's fine, I'll just sign that, that's fine. No one even questions what's going on in there. I'm going to talk about a caveat to that in a second, which is child support. So there you go. The family law court fees, attorney's fees are your biggest cost, and they depend upon your emotional and psychological state with the person you're arguing with. Of course, on theirs as well. But in this podcast, I want to give you some very strong tips on how to get out of the trap of family court, even if your ex seems relentless. So I also want to share that that's the divorce process is going to be, how much crap is it going to take between the time this person hires me and the time we enter a final agreement with the other side? Is it going to be a very quick and easy process because they're so collaborative? Or is it going to be War of the Roses, which is a movie most people might not remember who are listening to this, but it was a classic movie of a very messy divorce. War of the Roses. It was a Hollywood movie where they were just ripping each other to shreds. Another thing about the divorce case, how ridiculous it can get, is like, I remember I'm charging $250 an hour. The other attorney's at least that high. And I remember the client was like, the cable company needs to come and turn off the cable or internet service at the house that my ex is in, and we're still separating, and the ex is ignoring me. Will you communicate with their attorney that the Wi-Fi internet service provider is going to be there tomorrow at 10 a.m. to turn the internet off? And then I'd be like, I'll call the other attorney, billing at hundreds an hour. I'm like, hey, they're saying that the internet provider is going to be at your house tomorrow at 10 a.m. to turn the internet off where your client lives, and your client's ignoring my client's messages, and so I need to let you know that. And then they'd be like, oh, okay, well, let me call my client and let them know. Oh, and then they'd call their client, call me back. Hey, just so you know, my client's not going to be home at 10 a.m. tomorrow for the internet service to stop by and turn the internet off. He's not willing to talk to your client about it, but we need to pick another day. And I'd call my client, hey, did you know that they can't be there tomorrow at 10 a.m. for the internet provider to turn the service off? And he also says he isn't going to talk to you about it. So we need to pick another day. So when your internet provider has the new date, you let me know, and then I'll let the other attorney know. And then the other attorney will let your ex know. And then the ex can check their schedule, and they can get back with their attorney, and then they can get back with me, and I can get back with you about that. And most attorneys have, when I was doing it, about a quarter of an hour minimum when we bill, so it's like I have a lot of things I would do in favor of my clients myself that are top to bottom, but I'm trying to let you know how the system works. And one quick phone call is a 0.25 an hour, a quarter of an hour in a billing document, even if we just spoke for two minutes. That's how a lot of law offices work. So just calculate the number of dollars that both clients are spending on trying to schedule an internet cutoff at the house when they won't talk to each other. I have seen thousands of dollars spent on issues like who gets a $10 coffee maker. So when it comes to divorce, every single step of the way that you can cut your lawyer out and go straight into communicating with your ex is saving hundreds of dollars, if not thousands, like every time that you can talk with your ex and come to a simple agreement. Like, oh, you can't be there at 10 a.m. What about the next day at 10 a.m.? Yeah, I can be there then. Okay, let's do it. That's free without the lawyers involved. So I hope the message is coming through, especially about divorce, is that you spend a lot of money and a lot of emotional bandwidth to fight when you're in a divorce and you're using lawyers. Now I want to talk about child support. Child support's different. I think every state in the U.S. is like this. The state government believes it is who is owed for child support. And they'll make sure that the money gets to the parent who has the most custody and time with the child. So child support is an area where the government has decided that it has its own interest in getting that money paid. So the government has come up with how much is going to get paid based on a bunch of factors and how often, and set up its own court system with, I want to say, free attorneys. Let me just check in on myself here. There's sort of like some free attorneys in there, but sort of on limited basis because the government is like, we're getting this done and we don't care what the parents are going to do or say or want. We're going to get child support paid. So the state will, in a child support case, maybe the state will agree with your agreement with your ex on what the child support should be, and maybe the state won't. So that's where the judge might step in and go, I see what you've agreed to, but I don't agree because I, the judge, represent the state and I want him to pay a lot more, or I want this to work differently. So there's a couple of things about the child support issue. One of those points is that you and your ex might agree on child support, but the government has to agree to your agreement on child support. That's just how it's set up right now. Another aspect of it is that, well, along with that is a lot of collection efforts. The government has a lot of right to collect your bank accounts if you don't pay child support, but I don't even want to go down into that detail. The other important part about child support is that because the government has decided that it will lord over all child support in the state, they have a free system that you can take advantage of if that's all you need. So if you're a person who just needs child support, you don't need to get a divorce, you don't need to do custody issues, you just need child support set up. In Texas, it's the Attorney General. I think in every state in the U.S., it's the Attorney General's office of the state that has a department for child support, and you can go and for free you get a basic amount of efforts to get child support paid. It's if you just want your basic mathematical formula of child support done, it's a pretty good system to go to because you don't have to pay a lawyer. And you can go get the child support set up without paying. That's a very big benefit for a lot of people. On the other hand, you obviously have like a cookie cutter system there the government is going to use for child support. So if you have any complications or complex issues around your child support stuff, it might benefit you to hire a lawyer to pull yourself out of that cookie cutter state government system and make some customized arguments for your case on child support. for or against child support. Either way, if it's complex, you might want to hire an attorney for child support. Yeah, so there's all kinds of details there, but that's your basic. You might have a free ride on a child support issue by going to work with the state and getting them to help you. Now, custody cases I want to talk about, because in Travis County, Texas, Austin, Texas, our divorce judges don't really want to hear about your personal life unless it's a custody case and you have kids. So you might have, this is where every county and every state will be different and your judges will be different. In Travis County in Austin, Texas, we are, the popular way of looking at it is that we're very open-minded and liberal society in Austin. And so the judges in divorce cases don't really want to hear about an affair, for instance. If there are no children involved with the issue, they don't care. They really don't care. And they don't want to hear someone's gay as an accusation. They're like, half the judges are gay. So they're like, I don't know why you're flapping your lips right now about this. I don't want to hear this. I don't care if someone in this divorce case is gay or lied to the other person, unless it's certain specific things. I don't care if who's dating who, especially about the love life issues and affairs and dating and cheating. In Travis County, that's just not anything they want to hear about at all. They don't care. They just don't care. Now, if you're in a area where your judges are, for instance, more religious, they might actually penalize someone in a divorce case because they came out as gay or something. Or the adultery issue is technically a legal issue in a divorce case, even with no children. So there's a law that says if adultery is committed in the marriage, there's issues when it comes to finances on the divorce. I'm just saying, in our quote-unquote evolved town, unquote, the judges are like, I am not going to listen to anything about adultery. If there's no kids involved here and it didn't affect them, just don't talk about it. I don't care. So it's good to know where do your judges care about lifestyle issues if there are no children involved? Here, no. Now, in the custody case, there are children involved. And so it's important to understand that if you have children under the age of 18 in Texas and you're transitioning away from your marriage or you're living together, and so now you need to decide who gets the kids when, which is most of what custody is, who gets the kids when, and what follows from that is usually a formula of who pays who child support. And there are other important issues in custody, but biggest issue is who gets the kids when, and is there money going back and forth for child support. And when those issues of the children can't be agreed to without court, because that's your biggest area of finding agreement and saving money on court. If you and your co-parent can agree on who gets the kids when, and is there money flowing here between us. And sometimes people get hung up on medical issues and other kinds of issues and decision making, but mostly it's like, hey, can we just agree on who gets the kids when, hopefully based on our work schedules and life schedules. We'll find what's best in our actual schedules for who gets the kids when, based on what's best for the kids. Like, hey, I work a night shift, you work a day shift. How about during the night they're with you and the day they're with me more often, and all this stuff. So if you can come up with your whole customized schedule that's just the best for you and your work schedule and your co-parents' work schedule, and that's the best for the kids. Just agree to that. You don't have to live in these rigid cookie cutter schedules that the government's going to give you if you can't agree otherwise. So in a custody case, not only can you save the money of lawyers by agreeing with your co-parent, not only can you save all the emotional strife of fighting with your ex if you agree on your custody issues outside of court, but custody trials are where basically your entire lifestyle is on trial, baby. So if you're a co-parent and you're going to go to court and fight over custody, who gets the kids when, congratulations, you just opened up all of your entire lifestyle to the family court as an issue. So now the court might want to know, do you stay up late at night? Do you have a healthy lifestyle? Do you go out every night and party? How much drinks and drugs do you do? What's your psychological and mental health state? What kind of prescription drugs are you on? What kind of illegal drugs are you on? What do you do all day long? So if you don't agree on a custody issues with your co-parent and you're headed to family law court for custody, you're in it's not rare, it's very common, but you are in the main area where you better be ready to open up your entire life. How often do you go to church? What kind of way do you talk to your children? Do you use your car seat correctly? It's oh my God, your life can be nitpicked to death if you are in a custody fight in family court. So the incentive couldn't be higher, in my opinion, to get together with the co-parent and figure out who gets the kids when. I have seen hundreds of thousands of dollars spent on each side for attorneys for custody cases. And the nightmare about custody cases, is truly a nightmare, is that because they're children and they change and grow over time and situations change over time, if you're in a custody battle and your co-parent is not going to agree with you on anything because you guys can't stand each other or whatever reason, and your child is 1 year old when you separate and you're in the biggest custody fight and argument with the other parent, you can go to court every year for the next 18 years fighting over custody. It can be a literally endless custody fight throughout the minor years of the child and well into a few years later if you're still going to be arguing over the past. So in other words, custody cases can never end. Literally, I'm not kidding, because almost never. For decades, because I can get custody of the child and they're 2 years old, and then things change, and then I start using drugs and I'm on cocaine all the time now, and so now my ex has to go back for what we call a modification of the custody case or enforcement of custody issues, and those can go on and on. Then we go back to court, and then my ex gets most of the time with the kid, but then a year later they start using meth and can't take care of the kids, so I have to go back to court the next year and modify so that I get most of the time with the kids. Blah 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 blah. You can literally I'm sure you can spend millions of dollars on custody battles. I'm sure of that, throughout the life of the child. And think about how miserable that is for everybody, every single second of every day, because of that tension that's going on. Typically, a custody fight starts to take the focus way off the child, and you just have these two parents arguing in a way that no one is doing what's best for the child. That's just by the fact that you're having a custody fight in court almost defines the fact that the two parents are more caught up in arguing than they are in thinking about what's best for the child. Just let that soak in. It's like, let's get back to what's best for families, what's best for the children. It has nothing to do with family court whatsoever. So let me see if I can get this rolling on through. I want to talk about attorneys, family law attorneys. And yes, I have been one for a long time. Family law attorneys, when I started out in the 90s in Travis County, Austin, it were very relatively congenial. So we would have monthly luncheons at a restaurant all together. All the family law attorneys of Travis County have a monthly luncheon. And it was relatively congenial in the beginning when I was practicing law. And then throughout my career, I started hanging out more with the criminal defense attorneys than the family law attorneys. Here's why. There are only really two kinds of attorneys that are going to court all the time in any place in America: family law and criminal. If you're not a family law attorney or a criminal defense attorney or prosecutor, you're not really going to trial that often. If you call yourself a trial attorney and you do personal injury or business lawsuits or other kinds of things, usually you might have like a trial once a year or every 2 years or something like this. But criminal defense attorneys and prosecutors in criminal law and family law attorneys are pretty much in court every week, constantly having hearings, family law, contested hearings. That's one reason I did it, because I don't like to sit down at a desk that long. I like to walk around, I like to talk to witnesses and investigate cases and go to court, talk, walk around, move my body. So I would hang out with the criminal defense attorneys because, think about it, the criminal defense attorneys are basically always on the same side. And that creates a culture of real congeniality and sister and brotherhood. So the criminal defense attorneys have this beautiful aura when they're all get together, generally, that's like, hey, we're all on the same side. We share secrets, we share information, we work together as a group to win more of our cases. We really enjoy one another, and we're on the same side. You go over to the family law luncheon, and over the 20 years that I practiced family law, that I went to that luncheon, plus, we're against each other in court all the time. And over the years I was a family law attorney, that luncheon became more and more like painful and bristly and rude and cantankerous and argumentative. And another thing that happened over the time I was a family law attorney is that the attorneys went from more ethical and congenial and more client focused in the beginning. Like I remember, it was a lot more easy in the beginning when I got a new client to pick up the phone, call the other attorney, and just solve it on the phone right there, first phone call. Maybe we would set up a lunch together, me and the other attorney, and we would just sit down and be like, look, here's what my client wants and needs, here's the most important stuff. And the other one, like, here's my client's most important stuff, let's see what we can work out here. We could work cases out in a phone call. A lot. This was not that uncommon. It was like, how simple can we make this? Through the 20 years plus I practiced as a family law attorney, it got so ugly. The quote-unquote most successful family law attorneys are the most worst at fighting just to get more money in their offices. So what you have then, I remember I had a case, and it was so sad to me because I was pretty expensive. The other attorney was on the other side was way more expensive and fancy. The fancy family law attorneys in your city and your town are probably the ones that are fighting to get more money for them. So this fancy attorney was just disagreeing with us on every single thing, large and small. It didn't seem like for any reason. And we were in private one time without any clients around, and I said, what? Because I already knew that his client, this fancy attorney, his client was getting paid by the client, his client's parents draining their retirement to give him his family law attorneys fees. So I already knew that his client doesn't even have money to pay him, but his client's parents are literally transferring their retirement that they had saved being school teachers over to his accounts so their son can keep fighting in family court. And I said to this attorney privately, when no one was around after some long deposition that was stupid, we were in private, and I said, why are we not coming to agreement here? This case has no reasons to be continuing the argument. And he said, my client's a golden goose. Meaning, I don't have all their money yet. That's why we're still fighting. So by the time I left this disgusting family law environment in Travis County, which I just can't stand anymore at all, you had two kinds of lawyers in family law in Travis County at that point when I left. One, very sweet, very nice. They really want to help you get your case settled as fast as possible and simple as possible. And they focused on your best interest. And often that attorney didn't know how to fight. So if you had a fighter on the other side, they might get clobbered. And you might lose a lot of things that you might otherwise have won with a super nice, sweet attorney. That's how it was. I hate to say this out loud. But then if you went to a lawyer who was a quote-unquote good fighter, or that would really stand up for you, quote-unquote, those lawyers would just fight just to fight. And so you'd be lost because you don't know. And they're like, well, you need to argue over this. You need to fight over this. This is worth it for you. You need to fight. You need to argue. Like, they're just making up arguments for their own pocketbooks. So sadly, I just couldn't wait to leave the profession when I did, because I saw clients getting just creamed, either by a fighter who just takes their money just to fight, and they consider themselves very fancy and expensive, and they usually see themselves as very, very big egos. Almost as big as a doctor's, just kidding, kind of. Or they go to a really nice attorney and basically just kind of get clobbered and creamed if the other side was going to go to the fighting side. So attorneys, that's the truth. Family law attorneys, I might know one or two I could refer people to in Travis County when they still ask me for a referral, but it's very difficult at this point. Juries. In family law, no one really ever sees a jury. And the main reason is they cost a lot more. So if you're paying your attorney's fees and you want a jury in your divorce or custody case, it's often going to be a good $20,000 more minimal right up front, just like for attorney's fees. Like just right up, like at minimally 20 extra thousand or something, just. So if you want a jury, sure, that'd be great. It'd be a lot of fun. And if they're just, they require a lot more work on the attorney's part, like a lot more. And so therefore, they're just so expensive that most people don't do jury trials at all in family court. They're very rare. So then that means that the jury isn't going to decide your case if you don't figure it out with your ex. The judges are going to make the decision for you, the family law judges. And here we have a whole new horror story. There's a judge in Travis County that's currently sitting there right now. The judges in Travis County, so we have in Austin, Texas, Travis County, we have a long history of having single political party rule in this town. In a very, very long history of Democrats winning almost every single local election for decades here. So we just have one party that traditionally just rules, and that's just a given. And what that means is that our elected judges are actually not selected from a pool of qualified candidates. All the elections in Travis County are, including the judges, are inside decisions in private rooms, closed door sessions in the Democratic Party. So if you don't play along with the single party that rules everything here, they won't pick you to run for judge, because they'll decide who runs for judge from their party, and they will only pick certain people based on their own inside clique systems of popularity contest, and refer back to extremely childish behavior and junior high like decision making. And that's who's deciding who's even going to run for judge. And we go to the ballot box in Travis County and there's no contest because one party always wins. So there's really no citizens and voters. We don't select anything here. The party behind closed doors decides who we're going to vote for, and then we always pick the same side by definition, so no voters actually make those choices. And so who gets to be the judge in Travis County is a very, very cliquey, childish process of decision making that decides who's going to be the judges, to even run for elected positions. And then we have a level of family court judges that aren't even elected. They're picked by the judges. And so that's super cliquey. It's like, it really is like elementary school in that environment. And it feels like that too. It feels like Mean Girls in high school environment when you're around these people. It's like, oh, they're cliquey, gossipy, are you in the in crowd? And so that's what you have picking the judges. And so then you have these variety of people on the bench, not picked by skill sets or warm, open hearts toward families' benefits. That's not the criteria. So there's one judge in Travis County who is so petty and so angry and so personally unstable psychologically that I would go in front of him and he would just have a personal temper tantrum over anything and everything unknown, and whatever way his temper flared that day is how all the cases got decided. And I was in his courtroom and I saw him, what I would say, violate the law of how trials are supposed to work over and over and over. And he's just so mad and angry that everyone would be like afraid in his courtroom even to just talk to him. And he might jump down an attorney's throat right in front of everybody any minute because he's such I'm just going to use the nicest word I can think of, is unstable psychologically. And so here's this judge who, like, if you get him by the roll of the dice, because every morning for court we would have a list of court cases and we'd roll the dice on which judges we get that day. And if you get him by roll of the dice, you're in hell, because it doesn't matter what your case is. It just doesn't matter. He's going to see something in one person or the other person that ticks him off, and that's it. And isn't that disgusting that you would have big money decisions and fairness decisions made in families, and that you would have children's safety issues in custody cases overridden by a petty judge's childish ego? And I witnessed that more than once. I remember one case in particular where I'm like, really? Because of your temper, you're going to endanger these children? You don't care at all about that at all? We have seen the evidence, and you're putting them in the dangerous house, like physically, violently dangerous house, because you're upset about some other little thing that happened. So this is the kind of thing that really does happen. And we have we're known as a place that has some of the best judges and family court system. And it's terrible. So I want to say more about this. As a lawyer, I saw that he was violating rules and rights and harming people and harming children. I saw that. But I had to make a decision. Was I going to get out public about that and try to stop him or do something about it, do anything about it, and have him even more mad at me and guarantee that I would lose every single case that ever got in front of him? And my cases are decided which judge is by the roll of the dice. So any case I go up to the courthouse might be him, and I would lose every single case because he's so petty if I said anything about his problems? Or was I going to be quiet like we're taught to do in this society and not say anything about his harms on families, and maybe win my cases and maybe stay popular, and maybe someday I could be a judge, which I'm laughing about, never would? Well, you already know me well enough. I decided to say some things. And there are stories behind me saying some things. I remember one time we were in the entire family law luncheon, was all the family law attorneys were there, and he was speaking up front about something. And I raised my hand when it was Q&A time, and he reluctantly called on me. And I said, "What's your view on judicial temperament?" And half of the room started snickering under their breath. Family law attorneys, they were like, because they know he's a fucking dick. I was trying not to say it. And he got so red because the whole room was snickering at him because they knew why I asked that question. And he turned very red and, of course, hated my guts every day after that. But I didn't stop there. I filed a written complaint with his violations with the chief judge, literally putting my career on the line. And I told the chief judge, look, he's harming people. He's harming children. He's harming families. He's harmful for this county. And here are the rules he's violated, and here are the examples. And to be very honest with you, this was all heating up in a really big way between me and this judge when I did decide to leave the profession. And I think that's important because I think that's not why I left at all, not even close. That's not why I left the profession. But I think it illustrates that an attorney cannot rise up against the system inside these systems unless they want their careers to be ruined. Now I want to talk about mediation. When I started practicing, we didn't have mediations. It was this radical hippie idea. It was this new agey thing out there. Like, what? Mediation? We just go to trial. We just go to court. But actually, what was really happening there is that I would call the other attorney and we would solve it on the phone. That's what was really happening anytime that we could do that. Then mediation came in as a thing, and it was seen as progressive, and it was seen as helpful, seen as more collaborative and friendly. And in the beginning it was, because in the beginning they would put the husband and wife in the same room together almost every time unless there was violence. And the husband and wife in a mediation would have a chance to cry, to look one another in the eyeballs, to give a tearful apology for some things, to have some forgiveness happen. And you already know what governs the case. This is what governs the case. So when you had that face-to-face, heart-to-heart, sometimes you could solve the whole case in a quick mediation because you have the two people just see one another and agree on what's best because they were together heart to heart, and there was that one more chance to just agree to everything there. And then over the time that I was practicing in the 20 years, mediation became an institutionalized waste of time and piece of crap, and a way that lawyers could get a lot more money into their offices. So because it was seen as new agey, soon over the years it was mandatory before court. So now we have this mandatory process of mediation. And lo and behold, the wisdom of the now highly paid attorney mediators was to separate husband and wife in two separate rooms is the more modern way to do it. And so the more modern way, there's never a chance for the husband and wife to look each other in the eye and have a tearful apology or forgiveness moment and solve the entire case. You never get to do that now in the modern way that when I left it was. In that way, the mediator, who's a very expensive lawyer now, keeps the other two very expensive lawyers and their clients in two separate rooms, and the expensive mediator walks back and forth between the two rooms. Hey, they say they'll do this. What do you say? You're like, oh, we don't like this for that reason. Oh, let me go tell them. Hey, they don't like this for that reason. What do you think? Well, we don't like it for this reason. Well, hey, I'll just go tell them that. Now you have three very, very highly paid professionals just sucking up the money, and a system of mediation that isn't even what it used to be. It doesn't even solve anything. So now you have the two expensive lawyers and the expensive mediator lawyer locking horns and spending a 10 or 12 hour day shuttling back and forth where the people never even get to see each other in the face, and acting like they're trying to solve the case, but really they're just trying to while away 10 or 12 hours in the office building so that literally everybody earns thousands of dollars that day each from the clients and nothing is resolved. That's what mediation has turned into. And I have been in so many of them. I think hundreds. I know how the system works at this point. It's a shit show. At this point, you're lucky if you can get into a real good old-fashioned, sincere mediation environment. I haven't seen one in a very long time. At this point, they're just financial raid of the bank accounts and nothing else. And that brings us to the exciting topic of collaborative family law. I saw this one coming. This one came in a lot after mediation. If you've heard of collaborative family law, it's much more recent than the mediation idea. And it's much more brilliant from the perspective of raping the family's bank accounts. So collaborative family law sounds good, doesn't it? Yes, it does. It's very deceptive how it sounds. In collaborative family law, it's mediation on 1,000 steroids, and we will be raping your account in an exponential rate. So let me share about this warm and fuzzy sounding collaborative family law. The concept, of course, is pristine, and that's how everyone gets sucked in. But how it really works is, if you agree to this collaborative family law process, which is very, it's sold as progressive and helpful. But what's really happening there is now each side is going to hire a collection of 5 experts or so. Now you're going to hire a very expensive attorney mediator to preside over months and months of debate and conversation, not just one day. And now you're going to also pay your very expensive, specially trained collaborative family law attorney, usually even more per hour than a regular other non-specialized collaborative law attorney. You're going to pay more money to the lawyer, much, much more money to the collaborative law, whatever they call the mediator person, neutral. And now you're going to hire very expensive financial expert, and so is your spouse. And now you and your spouse each separately are going to also hire the very expensive parenting expert. And now you're going to also be paying some really expensive therapists to give your children specialized collaborative family law therapy and assess them. And now you're going to pay another separate expert to do psychological assessments on your children. And now you're going to pay another specialized visitation expert to come in and spend a lot of hours analyzing the best time sharing system for your children in the two houses. So I'm slightly exaggerating. You might not have to hire every single one of those in every single collaborative case, but they're going to tell you up front, oh, by the way, to make this really progressive system work for you, you're going to have, I don't even know how you can even get out of a collaborative family law case for less than $50,000 to $100,000 per side in family law attorneys and expert fees. I don't know how. So that's the modern and most progressive invention in family law when I left. So finally, I'm going to talk about the way out of this system. Thankfully, right, River? Yay, River's going to talk about answers now, not just depressing stuff. The exit ramp off the family law trap. Yeah, there is a way out. At least there might be a way out for you. I would say there probably is a way out for you. And so let's talk about it. The overview. First of all, if you have a person who is your quote unquote opponent, is probably your lover, because in a divorce or a custody case, you probably slept with them, and at that moment, you probably liked them, possibly even loved them more than anybody else in the whole wide world. And so I just want to remind you, if you can come back to, I chose to sleep with them. I chose to share all of me with them. And I'm going to take responsibility for that now that we're arguing. You may decide, I don't want to argue in family law court, but your ex might be like, well, I'm fucking you up. I don't want to agree with you on anything. I'll spend every dollar I've ever found in my lifetime to fight you. That's worth it, I wish I could actually laugh at that. It's very sad. And if you are in a situation where you feel there is absolutely no possible way to talk with your ex and come to agreement, you have to go and hire an attorney. I just want to say, if you're out there hiring a family law attorney, ask questions. I was hired, I guess, hundreds of times, and I would say nobody ever asked me some of the most important questions. So if you're out there hiring a family law attorney because you feel like you probably have to, ask them questions like, how long have you been a family law attorney in this area? And it depends on which area you're in. Like if I shared earlier, like if I tried to practice law, let's say in Houston, and took a court case, I wouldn't know the judges. I wouldn't know what their personalities are like. Since judges decide on their personality, you want lawyers who are experienced in that county or that city court you're in. So like, hey, how long have you been practicing how long have you handled this kind of case? Let's say you have a divorce. How long have you been handling divorce cases? How long have you been handling in this area that we're in right here, this court system? How well do you know the various judges that might decide our case and know of how they are and how they decide cases? Are we going to get assigned to one judge and we'll know who that is, or are we going to have a roll of the dice every time we go to court and always have different judges? How do you relate with the other lawyers here in town? What's your favorite way to settle a case? Do you ever pick the phone up and talk with the other attorney and just see if you can settle it in one phone call? Do you ever try to get together in person with the other attorney and settle the case without any other people involved at all? No mediators, no other experts, just sit down and figure out what's best. Do you encourage us to solve problems on our own? Or do you think it's better when you help us solve every single problem? How do you handle a very aggressive other side? What do you do when the other side is aggressive and unreasonable? These are all really big questions. And every lawyer in family law has their own personality, which is often a junior high level emotionally and whatever. And they're personal and they're making their own, they have their own stuff, you know. I have met divorce attorneys who think divorce is wrong. And they're literally, every client that comes in their office, they try to convince them to stay married because they see that as their mission in life. I'm just pointing out, you don't know who you're talking to until you ask them these kind of questions. You know, if you have issues in your case, like let's just say that someone's an alcoholic in your case, then you can ask the lawyer, you know, have you had a lot of cases that involve alcoholics? Is there any special way you treat cases where there's an alcoholic in one of the people? Have you ever handled cases where the child has this disability? I was going to also drop a note in about child support, is that today in today's world, we have so many more people at a much higher rate who have lifelong disability. They start with their disability as children, and then they just are going to have lifelong disability in such a way that they will have child support that basically never ends. And when they turn into a young adult, it'll switch systems and there will still be ongoing lifetime adult support paid. So when there are medical disabilities in a child that they may have the rest of their life, that's where you may have truly a lifelong custody case on your hands. So anyway, back to the lawyers. Ask them all these questions. I never got asked these questions, but they would actually tell someone if I was a ethical attorney or not and what my style was, you know, because I would always counsel my clients in the beginning, if I want to help you come to an agreement with your ex as fast as possible, as easily as possible, with as least amount of emotional turmoil as possible. So if you can call them up, you know, and try to sit down at the kitchen table with them or get on a Zoom, you know, here, I'll just tell you the 5 issues that you guys need to figure out. You come back and just tell me what you decided. And your ex has to tell their attorney too, hey, you have to tell your attorney what to do, not ask them what to do. So if you're hiring a lawyer and you have to argue, ask them a lot of questions about how they argue, what their philosophy is on arguing, and what the system is going to do with arguments in your town you're in. And if you're hiring an attorney and you don't want to do the arguing with the lawyer, you can say to them, will you support me in getting together with my ex and coming up with our own agreements at the kitchen table and then telling you what we want in writing? Will you do it that way with me? And ideally, you come to the agreement with your ex and then both of you tell your family law attorneys what to put in the documents. Like, way too many people would walk in my office and be like, well, you know, what should I do about the kids' schedule? You know, I'd be like, well, they're your kids and you know your work schedule and your ex's work schedules. And what do you think would be the best thing to do with your kid's schedule? You know, don't ask the attorney questions about what's best for your family that you can decide what's best for your family. Family law court is about removing the actual decisions for what's best for your family away from you into attorney's hands or even into a judge or a jury's hands. These are strangers deciding what's best for your family, and I just don't think that's the best way for our society to function. So these are things you can do if you're finding out that you do need to hire the lawyer and you might need to argue. At least get your bearings on who you've got. If you also feel like your ex is gonna force, no matter what, force you into a contested trial or hearing where you're gonna go all the way and you're gonna have a trial against each other, then you also need to ask your attorney, how many trials like this have you had And how many have you won or felt victorious at? Because you want a lawyer who is going to help you stop the fighting as soon as possible, and who simultaneously is very good at fighting if you have to. That's the attorney I set out to be. I am trying to help you not fight with all the things and tools I have, and I'm giving you every chance to get out of the trap here. I want you out of the trap. But if you decide you need to fight, we're going to take this straight to victory, my love. Don't worry. Right? It's going to cost a lot of money, but we'll get your case heard in court fully. You will be heard and seen and understood. So these are things about hiring a lawyer. Now, there's important work. The most important work that you can do to get outside of the family law trap has nothing to do with a lawyer or your ex. It's just your internal work. So here is what I advise. This is the best way out of any kind of family law trap. Take radical personal responsibility for the situation you find yourself in. Radical personal responsibility. Open your eyes and look at the arguments that seem like they're in front of you about money, who gets the money, about who gets time with the kids when, and look at your ex's style that's so frustrating to you right now. It's so aggravating. And come to terms with the fact that you chose that person. That was your choice at some point. Even if it was a one-night stand, that was your choice. It's a very, very rare, far, far, far less than 1% of the cases, much, very, 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 almost never. I don't think I ever had the case where someone was like literally drugged and impregnated and didn't make the choice to get together on the one night stand. I didn't even ever see that in 20 plus years, never saw that one. So you chose that person at some point, even if it was 5 drinks in at the bar one night. Still, you chose to have the 5 drinks. You chose to go home with them, or you chose to bring them home. You chose to share your body with them. You chose to have a baby. You chose to get married if you are a married individual. That's your choices. Now, I had a case once where this woman was my client and she wanted a divorce, and she'd been married 25 or 30 years. And she had worked that whole time, I think as a state government worker. We have a lot of state government workers in Austin. This is the state capital. And I think she had been in a state government position working 25 to 30 years and had getting close to her retirement time. And her husband of that entire time had never worked, basically. He had been on the couch eating bonbons and watching television and complaining and being a fussy, unstable psychologically person with her and being mean to her from the couch and the bonbons. It never worked, just real mean to her. And so she wanted that divorce, and she was telling me, I don't want him to have half my retirement. He never worked. He just never worked. Not only did he never work, he was very mean to me. Now, keep in mind their children were grown, so there was no custody issue. We're just talking about divorce. When you don't have any children in the divorce, it's just a money question, really. So we were just dividing the money, and she was really wanting the lion's share of the money, which was mainly her retirement, because he was mean and never worked for 20, 30 years. And I was like, you're saying he was mean, Was there abuse? Because maybe there are certain ways you might be able to get a little bit more money based on actual abuse, right? So I'm like, tell me more so we could see if there are any arguments for you to get most of this money. And it was verbal rudeness, which basically, which is not nice, but it doesn't rise to the level of any kind of legal abuse that the judge wants to hear in this town. So I was like, there's no way out of sharing half of your retirement with your husband, my love. And she was so mad. And she was mad. I mean, actually, she was so mad, she filed a complaint against me at the state bar for not getting all of her retirement to her. They threw it in the trash at the state bar because that's not an actual complaint against anybody, a lawyer in our case. Like, in other words, I didn't break any rules. I didn't even do a poor job for her. She was just mad, and so there was no violation. I didn't have the complaint filed against me, went in the trash, but she was that mad. And I had to say to her after a lot of discussion, I have to be honest with you. The way the judge and the courts are going to look at this case is they're going to notice that you chose him and you chose to stay with him when he wasn't working and got mean. And then the next year when he wasn't working and he was mean, you still chose to stay with him. And then the next year he was mean and he wasn't working, you chose again to stay with him. And you chose to stay with him over and over for 25 years. So the courts are not the ones that did this to you. And the lawyer's not the one that did this to you. You need to take radical personal responsibility for the fact that you chose that partner and you chose to stay. And I feel for you and I have a lot of compassion, but in this scenario, he gets half your retirement. And that's just how it is. I had another one that was kind of similar as far as like this one. The woman came into my office, a separate case. Younger woman came into my office and she's like, I want you to get child support. I'm pregnant. Haven't had the baby yet. I'm pregnant and I want you to set child support up for the next 18 years against this guy. And then we did file that. And then the guy hires a lawyer and the lawyer comes back and says, this was a one-night stand. And your client told my client she was on birth control. And she wasn't. So your mother of this child directly lied and tricked my client into impregnating her. And now she wants the child support. And that's not fair. And this was a case where the other client needed to understand you, I want to say, I'm sorry, but you fucked her, like you had sex with her and you didn't protect your own sperm that makes babies. So you need to take radical personal responsibility. This family court law system, it's not set up for fairness. It's set up under all these cookie cutter ideas that are terrible. And you decided to impregnate someone, whether you thought they were on birth control or not. And I'm sorry, but you now will pay for 18 years. And that's how it's going to be. So even though it may all seem so unfair and be so frustrating, the way out of the family law trap is to take radical personal responsibility for all of your choices that led up to this argument. And then Texas two-step out of the drama triangle trap. So this is the last part of this pretty lengthy podcast. Thanks for sticking with me all this time, because this is the real down and dirty truth of it. There's a drama triangle or a victim triangle, that exists as a thought form out in the world. And the victim triangle or drama triangle is 3 points: victim, perpetrator, savior. And in our culture, we are trained into the drama triangle. There's always going to be a victim, a perpetrator, and a savior. And we're so trained into it that I was literally trained in law school, in mock trial class. When you're a trial attorney, every single case needs to have a victim, a perpetrator, and a savior. And you need to set the story up every single time so that the judge or jury is the savior, your client's the victim, and the other side's the perpetrator. So this victim triangle is literally the template for lawyers who go to trial. And our entire culture is built on this idea that if something goes wrong, there's a victim, a perpetrator, and a savior. And it keeps us in the victim mindset. And the secret of the victim triangle is once you're in there, you will take all 3 positions. And you are in a psychologically harmful triangle. So even if you think like, oh, I'm the victim and they hurt me so bad and I need help, I need a savior, and they need to pay for this and be punished for it, just pay attention to what's happening there. You're claiming as victim, and now what are you doing? You want to perpetrate against them because they owe you something now. So now you're the perpetrator and they're the victim of your wrath. And if you really focus on this, and there's lots of research on this in psychology circles, the victim triangle or drama triangle, thinking that there's a 3-way story unfolding between victim, perpetrator, and savior, traps us in a lower consciousness as a humanity. And the family court system is literally built upon the foundation of the drama triangle or victim triangle. So if you want a Texas two-step out of the trap, then this is going to involve inner work. Your inner work, where you set some time aside and space for yourself and you come to Jesus with yourself and you go, look, I am tired of feeling like a victim. I'm tired of feeling like anybody else can harm me or save me. I'm going to take radical personal responsibility. And what did Rivers say that Texas two-step was? Step number 1 in the Texas two-step is, I am going to take care of my own inner state, and I am going to bring my inner state out of the victim mode into the empowered creator. So whatever that takes. So step 1 is bring your inner state to wholeness yourself. When I say yourself, you may get help from a massage therapist. You may get help from going to a sound healing event. You may get help from any kind of healer of any kind, but that's you solving your own inner instability and fears yourself so that you can feel whole in yourself and you realize you're not the victim of anybody. You're an empowered creator in the world, and you will be able to not have to be part of this harmful drama triangle anymore because you can bring yourself back to wholeness. You don't need them for that, whoever the perpetrator is, alleged perpetrator. You bring yourself back to wholeness. Step number 1, you come to wholeness yourself with whatever supports you need for that. It may take a while, but it's worth it. You come to wholeness yourself. You're not a victim. You're an empowered creator of your own state of being. And however long it takes you to figure that out and however many supports you need for that, do it. Bring yourself to wholeness and see that you're an empowered creator and no one else can take that from you. And then step number 2 in the Texas two-step, turn toward the source of your grievances, meaning usually your ex, with open-hearted curiosity. What is going on for them? At the deepest levels, what is going on for them? Not in a judgmental way. Not to find blame, to have compassion and find out what is hurting them so much. If they could step out of their hurt, then both of you could step into empowered problem solving together. So if you find yourself in the drama triangle or victim triangle that our entire society is built upon, and that family courts are literally there to perpetuate, and you're feeling like a victim or perpetrator or savior, you're not any of them, you're all of them. And I recommend the Texas two-step out of that trap and triangle. Step number 1, no matter how long it takes, bring yourself to empowered wholeness. And step number 2, turn toward the person who you saw as your opponent with compassion and curiosity. And what is hurting them at the deepest level? Because if they weren't hurting at that deep, deep emotional level, we could resolve this between two empowered creators. And then we could just go tell the system where to shove it as they draft up our documents that we already decided on, and we're not budging. And then you and your family take sovereignty over the family court system, which is nothing but a weak and broken trap. So take sovereignty over your family's transitions and your family's business, and decide as an empowered creator with the rest of your family exactly what's going to happen in your family, because it's your family. It's not the government's family. And then if you have to have some legal documents in writing, then you and your family walk in to any attorneys needed to draft documents, and you tell them what to put in the documents. And that's it. No exceptions. If there's some legal ease, then they'll let you know, we have to massage this a little because of the law here, but I'm making your dreams come true in this document. Don't you worry. You tell the family court system what to do from an empowered perspective of deciding what's best for your own family. I get a little passionate because I've watched hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars be wasted. And forget the dollars. I've seen children, their worlds just ripped apart. Parents ripping each other to shreds emotionally, making up lies, accusing one another of things that are false, all to win their case, while the attorneys are laughing their way all the way to the bank. Yeah, I am passionate about it. Take yourself out of this trap. Well, I want to hear from you, darling, so please leave me a comment about this one or shoot me an email. Head to my website, riverroaring.com, and click up in the corner, Let's Connect. And then there's one button that says, Let's Talk River. And you can say anything you want to me. Give me your reflection, your insight, your question. I'd love to hear. Or if you find this podcast on a social media, then put a comment in there and I will come around and see it. I'd love to hear what you think about this podcast. And my darling, if it hasn't been evident already, I am here on earth to support everybody who's called to bring maximum love and light into their lives and to liberate their self-expression in all realms, where all is sacred, where the family is sacred again. We're connecting with you to create a cosmic web of love and light throughout the realms is what we do, because together we can step into a more harmonious vibration. We can fly higher if we do it together, shifting human consciousness forever for the highest good of all beings. May the love be with you, my darling, and may the love be with us all.